Greetings, my fellow motor cynicist brothers. A warm welcome to another video on the channel. In this video, we will address the long-term socioeconomic dangers facing a society composed predominantly of individuals unable to maintain focus for extended periods. We will also discuss the potential response of the state to the intellectual underdevelopment resulting from this attention poverty. With that said, let's get to the video. A country of attention-impoverished individuals. The prevalence of a population whose brain maturation was forged in the economy of attention poverty casts severe shadows over a nation's intellectual sovereignty and economic robustness, creating a landscape of structural stagnation. In the academic sphere, the most immediate impact is the erosion of basic research and sustained theoretical thought, which require what is termed deep focus. An academia composed of individuals trained in fragmentation tends to replace the pursuit of fundamental discoveries with the mass production of superficial, incremental papers aimed more at metrics of algorithmic visibility than at the genuine advancement of knowledge. The crisis of critical thinking becomes inevitable as the capacity to synthesize vast volumes of contradictory information and sustain methodological rigor over years is replaced by a culture of quick summaries and hasty conclusions. This creates a surface science, where the country ceases to generate original paradigms and becomes a mere reproducer of foreign methodologies, forfeiting its scientific autonomy and its ability to solve complex local problems requiring customized, patient solutions. From an economic standpoint, the phenomenon of impoverished attention translates into a drastic decline in high value-added productivity and disruptive innovation capacity. Modern economies increasingly rely on sectors such as biotechnology, cutting-edge artificial intelligence development, and complex engineering, fields demanding a workforce capable of maintaining focus on ambiguous, complex problems over extended periods. A country dominated by digital reactivity tends to slide into a low-value service economy, where labor is allocated to repetitive, fragmented, and easily automated tasks, such as platform microwork or the gig economy. Innovation is stifled because entrepreneurship ceases to be a quest for systemic solutions and becomes an attempt to capture the quick attention of the next click, resulting in a market saturated with ephemeral products devoid of lasting social utility. Furthermore, the hidden costs of mental health and absenteeism derived from cognitive burnout impose a growing fiscal burden, draining resources that could otherwise be invested in infrastructure or education. Ultimately, the disconnect between the speed of technological stimuli and the slowness required for intellectual maturity creates a nation of passive consumers rather than active creators. Economically, this generates a chronic technological dependence in which the country exports raw commodities and imports the intelligence and design of nations that manage to preserve enclaves of deep attention within their productive elites. Social inequality deepens, not merely by income, but through attentional capital. A small portion of the population capable of managing its own focus will command leadership positions, while the masses, captured by the incessant flow of distractions, become irrelevant to high-complexity processes. The end result is a cycle of cognitive and material underdevelopment, where attention poverty acts as an invisible barrier, preventing the country's human capital from reaching the potential needed to compete at the forefront of contemporary history. The nation risks becoming an existential periphery, producing much noise but little signal, where national wealth is consumed by its citizens' own inability to look beyond the next second. This silent transformation of the mind into a fragmented commodity redefines what we understand as national progress: attentional detoxification camps. The projection of an attentional detoxification thesis must be grounded on the premise that recovering cognitive sovereignty is not merely a lifestyle choice, but an existential defense imperative. An effective detox structure would require rehabilitating deep attention by deliberately imposing friction and slowness onto everyday processes, forcing the brain to decouple from the digital dopamine cycle of immediate reward. This would involve creating technological asceticism sanctuaries, where human interaction and intellectual output are mediated by analog tools or low-stimulus interfaces, allowing the prefrontal cortex to resume its executive control function. However, the danger of such a project lies in its vulnerability to state control, given that managing attention is, ultimately, managing the perception of reality. If the state assumes the role of curator over the population's mental health under the pretext of detoxification, it acquires the power to dictate which stimuli are healthy and which are subversive, turning cognitive rehabilitation into a form of hygienist indoctrination, where silence is permitted only if accompanied by ideological submission. For individuals who have already succumbed to the logic of superficial agility, the risk of falling into dictatorial regimes is alarming and multifaceted. A mind fragmented by attention poverty loses the ability to perform syntactic analyses of political propaganda and to identify logical contradictions in populist rhetoric. A modern dictatorship does not need to burn books if the population no longer possesses the cognitive stamina to read them. It suffices to flood the information ecosystem with rapid, contradictory, and emotional stimuli that keep citizens in a state of reactive trance. Individuals accustomed to instant gratification and algorithmic simplification become easy prey for authoritarian narratives offering binary solutions and clearly defined enemies for complex problems they can no longer process. Superficial agility atrophies historical memory and future projection, confining the subject to a perpetual present where the outrage of the moment replaces enduring political commitment. In this scenario, dictatorship ceases to be a regime of physical force and becomes a psychopolitics of invisible control. The authoritarian state can utilize the very infrastructure of the attention economy to monitor and modulate mass behavior, transforming distraction into a tool for social pacification, akin to Huxley's Soma, but operated by entertainment algorithms. The danger for the superficial individual is that they lose awareness of being controlled, as their will has been outsourced to systems that decide what they should see, feel, and hate. The inability to sustain focus renders citizens incapable of organizing resistance, since any opposition movement demands discipline, long-term planning, and a shared narrative that goes beyond a meme or a viral video. Thus, systemic inattention not only precedes tyranny, but serves as the fertile ground where it takes root, transforming a society of conscious citizens into a cluster of passive users, vulnerable to any power promising the next stimulus in exchange for their freedom. However, the real danger exists at the intersection between the attention economy and the emotional economy, for it reveals that human focus is not merely a scarce cognitive resource, but a process deeply mediated by affective states, where capturing the gaze inevitably depends on mobilizing feeling. While the attention economy, as proposed by Herbert Simon, focuses on the scarcity of time and processing capacity in the face of data superabundance, the emotional economy centers on the valuation and monetization of affects, transforming emotions into commodities and vectors of engagement. In the contemporary digital landscape, these two economies operate in symbiosis. Attention is the vehicle, but emotion is the fuel. An algorithm does not merely seek user time, it seeks emotional vulnerability, knowing that stimuli stirring outrage, fear, euphoria, or nostalgia possess far greater attentional glue than neutral or purely rational information. This fusion creates a market where the value of a fragment of information is measured not by its truthfulness or utility, but by its affective tone and capacity to generate a visceral response. In the emotional economy, individual subjectivity is mapped so that every interaction produces a psychometric data point, allowing platforms to calibrate content to maintain the user in a state of constant emotional readiness. This alters the nature of consciousness, which ceases to be a space of contemplation and becomes a stimulus reactor. If the attention economy generates a poverty of focus, the emotional economy generates an inflation of affects, where complex feelings are reduced to binary reactions of likes or shares, draining the depth of human experience for the sake of digital capital circulation speed. The parallel between the two economies manifests clearly in the management of crises and public debate. The attention economy dictates that what is not seen does not exist, while the emotional economy dictates that what is not felt does not matter. Together, they push the individual into a regime of affective capitalism, where attention is captured through the systematic exploitation of the limbic system. The danger of this convergence is the creation of a society with high reactivity and low reflexivity, where the capacity for critical thought is undermined by relentless waves of emotional contagion. In this market, attention becomes a good confiscated by whoever best manipulates the masses' affects, turning inner life into an extension of market logic, and making emotional autonomy the last redoubt of resistance against totalizing algorithmic control. Very well. We've reached the end of this video dedicated to the philosophical and sociological analysis of themes relevant to modernity. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. If not, I'm still grateful you made it this far. If you feel something was left out or presented incorrectly, or if you'd like to share your own point of view, please leave a comment. It would be most welcome. If topics like this interest you, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video. A fraternal farewell to all my motor cynicist brothers.